You were not born afraid to say no. That fear was taught. Slowly, repeatedly, quietly. It started with small things. A sigh when you hesitated. A cold stare when you expressed a boundary. A sudden silence after you spoke your mind. They didn't need to yell. They didn't need to threaten. All they had to do was shift the energy in the room. Withdraw affection. Make you feel like love had conditions. And so you adapted. You began to monitor their moods before you spoke. You rehearsed your needs before voicing them. You asked yourself, is this worth upsetting them? Before doing anything for yourself? That was the beginning of the training, not with force, but with guilt. They trained you to believe that your discomfort was less important than their peace, that your silence was a form of love, that your sacrifice proved your loyalty, and over time, you internalized the lie, that being good means being agreeable, that love means never disappointing, that saying no means hurting someone. But here's the truth, they weren't hurt by your no, they were offended by your freedom, because every time you showed autonomy, they felt their power slipping. And power disguised as love is all they ever wanted. So they manipulated you emotionally, not to understand you, but to shape you, to mold you into someone more convenient, more obedient, more predictable. And it worked, because now, you second-guess your instincts. You over-explain yourself. You apologize before speaking. You say yes when every cell in your body wants to scream no, but inside, you feel the erosion, the quiet despair of constantly betraying yourself just to keep the peace. And yet, no one sees the damage because it's not visible. There are no bruises, no evidence, just an invisible leash made of guilt and a lifetime of emotional conditioning. That's what they do. They don't chain your hands. They chain your identity, and every time you tried to reclaim it, they called you selfish, dramatic, ungrateful. After everything I've done for you, they say, as if love is a transaction, as if your boundaries are betrayals. But you didn't betray them. You betrayed yourself, over and over, until it became a habit, until pleasing others became survival. And this is how psychological control is built. Not through violence, through repetition, through subtle punishments for having a voice, through rewards for self-erasure. And by the time you realize it, you're already deep inside a cage you didn't see being built, a cage you helped decorate. One apology at a time, one silent night at a time, one yes that should have been no. But that ends now, because awareness is the first crack in the armor they placed over you. And this voice, this moment is not an attack, it's a mirror that reflects the part of you that's still alive, still waiting, still hoping to hear. Finally, that saying no doesn't make you bad. It makes you real. Most people won't understand why it's so hard for you to say no. They'll tell you to speak up, to set boundaries, to stand your ground, as if it were that simple. As if your nervous system wasn't conditioned to equate conflict with danger. As if every fiber in your body didn't tense up the moment you consider putting yourself first. But this isn't weakness. This is trauma. This is survival instinct shaped by years of invisible punishment. Because when you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, where peace depended on your compliance, saying no didn't just mean disagreement, it meant disconnection, rejection, punishment. So you adapted. You learned to avoid conflict by avoiding yourself. You mastered the art of keeping others comfortable, even if it meant walking barefoot on emotional glass. You became the one who always understood, who always forgave, who always stayed quiet, not because it was right, but because it was safer. But safety has a cost, and that cost is authenticity. The price is your voice, your truth, your needs. Until one day, you don't recognize yourself anymore. You find yourself exhausted, resentful, bitter, not because others have crossed your lines, but because you never drew them. And now you sit in silence, carrying the weight of everyone else's comfort, while your own soul feels like it's suffocating. This is what they don't tell you about being the strong one, that your strength often comes from self-abandonment, that the world will praise your kindness while ignoring your collapse, that they'll call you generous while draining everything you have to give, and worst of all, they'll never question why you give so much, because they benefit from your guilt, they benefit from your fear of being seen as difficult, and the longer you stay quiet, the more they build their comfort on top of your silence. But deep down, you know the toll it's taken on your mental health. You know how your body aches after another day of pretending. You know the pain of agreeing to something you didn't want, just to avoid the tension in their voice, the shift in their mood, the way they suddenly pull away when you don't comply. That's not love. That's manipulation through emotional withdrawal, and it works, because it targets your need for connection. It weaponizes your empathy. It teaches you that being honest will cost you everything, so you lie, you smile, you nod, but inside, you're screaming. Screaming for permission to be real, screaming for someone to tell you it's okay to disappoint others. In order to protect yourself, let this be that voice. Let this be the moment you stop apologizing for having needs. Let this be the beginning of your return, not to who they told you to be, but to who you were before guilt became your language. You don't owe them your silence. You don't owe them your compliance. You owe yourself your life back. There's a reason they didn't have to raise their voice to control you. They never needed to. They studied your patterns, your empathy, your desire to keep the peace. and they used it against you. Not by force, but by tension, by withholding, by silence, that screamed louder than words. And every time you stood up for yourself, the shift was instant. Their face changed. The warmth disappeared. The room felt colder. And suddenly, you weren't safe. So you backed down. Again, not because you were wrong, but because the cost of being right was isolation. That's how emotional training works. Not in one moment, but over time, repetition, subtle consequences for being yourself, rewards for compliance. And before you know it, your entire identity is built on performance. You perform peace, you perform agreement, you perform joy, even when you feel like you're drowning, and no one sees it, because your pain is quiet. Your exhaustion looks like kindness. Your collapse looks like generosity. But inside, you're fractured, torn between the fear of being alone and the ache of staying invisible. And this is where most people stay in between, half-voiced, half-alive, numb, because when you say yes to everything, you say no to yourself. And the world applauds it. They call you easygoing, cooperative, compassionate, but they don't see the cost. They don't see the nights you replay conversations in your head, wondering if you said too much. The way you flinch at confrontation, the way your chest tightens when someone says, "We need to talk." Because your nervous system was trained to associate truth with danger. And that training doesn't just disappear. It lingers. In your posture, in your tone, in your silence. That's why healing isn't about becoming louder, it's about becoming safer. Safe enough to hear your own voice again. Safe enough to disappoint others without collapsing. Safe enough to set a boundary and not explain it 3 times afterward. And that safety starts with one moment of honesty. One brave, quiet no, not shouted, not explained, just owned. Because every time you reclaim your no, you reclaim a piece of your identity. You begin to trust yourself again. To believe that your needs matter, that your discomfort is not a crime, that your voice is not a weapon, that your peace is not negotiable. And yes, it will be uncomfortable at first. You will feel guilt, you will feel doubt, you will feel like you're doing something wrong, but you're not. You're just breaking a pattern that was never yours to begin with. And when you do, you begin to taste something rare. Integrity, freedom, alignment, the moment. Where your insides finally match your actions. No more performing, no more shrinking. Just you, unfiltered, unedited, unafraid to exist on your own terms. And that is when healing truly begins. Healing from emotional manipulation isn't about waking up one day and feeling empowered. It's about waking up in pieces and choosing, day after day, to stop betraying yourself. It's about sitting with the guilt, the confusion, the silence, and still choosing to say no when your body says no, even if they pull away, even if they make you feel like the bad one, even if your entire nervous system screams to apologize, because your healing will look like rebellion to those who are invested in your silence. The moment you stop being easy to manage, they will call you selfish. The moment you stop explaining your boundaries, they will call you cold. The moment you stop abandoning yourself to preserve their comfort, they will call you difficult. Let them, because the truth is, they never loved the real you. They loved the version of you who kept quiet, who adjusted, who tolerated. But that version was dying inside. And now, you're choosing life. Not comfort, not approval. Life. Life that comes with clarity, with inner peace. With the sacred ability to say no without guilt. To say yes without pressure. To walk away without apology. Because love that demands, your silence is not love, it's control. And you were never born to be controlled. You were born to be whole, to be free, to be fully present in your own body, with your own thoughts, standing on your own truth. You don't have to yell. You don't have to explain. You don't have to be understood. You just have to stop shrinking. Stop rehearsing. Stop apologizing for being exactly who you are. And yes, people will leave. The ones who benefited from your self-erasure will walk away. Let them. Their exit is not your loss. It's your liberation. Because when you stop performing, when you stop negotiating your worth, when you stop begging to be chosen, something shifts. You become someone different, someone rooted, someone calm, someone who doesn't chase approval because they've already chosen themselves. And that kind of presence, that silent, grounded, unapologetic clarity, it's rare, it's powerful, it's real. So if you're still scared to say no, let this be your permission. Not because you owe anyone a reason, but because you're finally done owing everyone everything. You get to say no, without guilt, without apology, without fear, because the truth is simple. They didn't love your no, because they couldn't control it. And that's exactly why you need to use it.